We are taking this house to pay your brother's debts, Marin, so you need to pack your bags and leave. My mother's voice is completely devoid of warmth, her eyes fixed on the smug man in the expensive suit standing next to her on my front porch. I stand in the doorway of the home I built with my own blood and sweat, staring at the three of them. My father smirks, a look of sheer arrogance plastered across his aging face. My mother crosses her arms, looking down her nose at me like I am nothing but dirt beneath her expensive shoes. They are absolutely certain they have trapped their prey. Thank you for watching video. Before I take you back there, do me one small favor. Take a second to like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. It helps more than you know. My name is Marin. I am 32 years old, and I am the invisible daughter. I was born into a family that operated on a very strict, unspoken caste system. At the very top of this hierarchy was my older brother, Declan. Declan was 34 years old, the firstborn son, the absolute royalty of our household. He was the golden child, a boy who could do no wrong, who was constantly showered with praise, money, and endless second chances. I, on the other hand, was the scapegoat. I was the dumping ground for every expectation, every chore, and every ounce of my parents' unresolved anger. I learned very early on that love in my house was incredibly conditional, and I simply did not meet the conditions. While my parents, Richard and Helen, were busy funding Declan's extravagant lifestyle, I was completely ignored. When I turned 18, the financial reality of my existence became utterly staggering. I was told that there was no money for my college education, despite my father running a very successful local business and my mother having a massive inheritance. I worked 3 exhausting jobs. I served tables until 2 in the morning, I folded clothes at a retail store, and I tutored lazy college kids just to afford my cheap textbooks and my daily meals of instant noodles. Meanwhile, Declan was living a life of profound luxury. My parents bought him a brand new sports car for his high school graduation. They paid his full tuition at an expensive private university, where he spent most of his time partying and failing his classes. When he dropped out and declared himself a cryptocurrency investor, my parents did not hesitate to completely fund his delusions. They paid the rent on his high-rise apartment in the city. They bailed him out when his investments inevitably crashed. Whenever I dared to ask why things were so entirely unbalanced, my mother would just purse her lips and deliver her favorite excuse. Family helps family, Marin. That phrase was her ultimate weapon. But it only ever applied in one direction. When I was 22 years old and suffered a ruptured appendix, I was hospitalized for 5 days. The medical bills were utterly devastating. I had to beg my parents for a tiny $2,000 loan just to keep my electricity from being shut off while I recovered. They treated me like an immense burden, sighing heavily and making me sign a piece of paper promising to pay them back within 6 months. I paid them back in 4 months with interest. That was the moment my heart turned completely icy. We accept the love we think we deserve, until the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of walking away. I walked away. I threw myself entirely into my career. I am a supply chain director for a massive international logistics firm. My entire existence revolves around tracking assets, mitigating risks, organizing chaos, and ensuring that the ledger always balances perfectly. I see patterns where others see confusion. I am meticulous, I am ruthless with numbers, and I document absolutely everything. Over the next 10 years, I built an empire of my own. I saved every single penny. I skipped vacations, I drove a beat-up old sedan, and I invested my money with absolute precision. By the time I was 31, I purchased my dream home. It was a beautiful, sprawling property in a quiet neighborhood, worth exactly $600,000. I bought it all by myself. I did not ask for a single dime from my family. I hosted them for dinner once after I moved in, and they spent the entire evening making passive-aggressive comments about how the house was too big for a single woman, and how Declan was currently struggling in a tiny apartment because the economy was just so unfair to him. Little did they know, The very independence they forced upon me was about to become the snare that would break their golden empire. It is a quiet, beautiful Saturday morning. I am standing in my kitchen in my comfortable pajamas, holding a warm mug of black coffee. I am finally resting after a grueling 60-hour work week. The birds are singing outside my window. The sunlight is streaming through the glass. And then, the doorbell rings. I open my front door to find Richard and Helen standing on my porch. They are not alone. Standing slightly in front of them is a tall, slick man holding a heavy leather briefcase. He looks down at me with an expression of profound boredom and sheer entitlement. They do not say hello. They do not ask how I am doing. "We are taking this house to pay your brother's debts, Marin, so you need to pack your bags and leave," my mother says, her voice completely devoid of warmth. The man in the suit steps forward and thrusts a thick stack of papers toward my chest. "This property belongs to the family. We are seizing it," my father barks, crossing his arms and puffing out his chest. I do not scream. I do not cry. I am entirely frozen. I look at the man in the suit, then at my parents. "Based on what financial claim?" I ask. My mother glares at me, her face twisting into an ugly, self-righteous sneer. "We spent $600,000 raising you. You owe us for the food you ate, the clothes you wore, and the roof over your head when you were a child. We are simply collecting our investment." They want my home. They want the sanctuary I bled for, just to hand it over to the golden child. They stand there, absolutely certain that I will crumble, that the obedient little scapegoat will just burst into tears and surrender her entire life's work because they used their loud voices and brought a man in a suit. Little did they know, I had been preparing for this exact moment for 14 years. I smile. It is an icy, terrifying smile. It is the smile of a predator watching its prey step directly into a steel trap. "Give me exactly 1 minute," I say. I leave them standing on the porch. I walk into my home office and I unlock my fireproof safe. I pull out my heavy, black leather ledger. I also grab my smartphone. I walk back out to the front porch. The man in the suit is already tapping his expensive watch, looking profoundly annoyed. I unlock my phone and turn the screen toward him. We have reached the absolute end of the line, and it is time to bring down the hammer of reality. "I am assuming you are a real estate attorney," I say, my voice completely flat and dripping with absolute authority. "If you are, you should know how to read a federal mortgage note and a warranty deed." The attorney narrows his eyes and leans in to look at the screen. "My bank records prove I qualified a loan," I state, my words cutting through the morning air like a blade. "The purchase price was $600,000. The down payment of $120,000 was wired directly from my personal checking account. The deed of trust is in my name, and my name only. My income as a supply chain director was the sole qualifying metric for the underwriter. My parents gave me $0. They have absolutely zero equity, zero legal standing, and zero rights to this property." The attorney freezes. The color completely drains from his face. His mask is slipping, shattering into a million pieces right there on my welcome mat. My father starts to panic. "That is a lie. We gave you cash. We gave you financial support for years. She is hiding the money." I slowly open the heavy black ledger. "I am a supply chain director," I say, staring directly into the attorney's wide, terrified eyes. "I track inventory down to the microgram. I track finances down to the fraction of a cent. And I have tracked every single interaction with my parents since the day I turned 18. I flip to the first marked page. 2012, I read aloud, my voice ringing with sheer power. "Declan receives a $30,000 vehicle. I receive $100 for used college textbooks. 2014. Declan receives $60,000 for a failed business venture. I receive a $50 gift card for my birthday. 2017. Declan requires $90,000 in bail money and legal fees to avoid prison for his fraudulent cryptocurrency activities. I receive nothing." Helen is completely breathless. Richard is opening and closing his mouth like a suffocating fish. Over 14 years, I continue, snapping the ledger shut. You transferred exactly $550,000 to your golden child. You gave me $5,000 for an emergency surgery, which I repaid with federal interest rates applied, and I have the wire transfer receipts to prove it. I look back at the attorney. He is utterly shattered. He is looking at my parents with an expression of pure, unadulterated horror. You brought a corporate litigator to my doorstep to enforce a fabricated eviction notice based on deliberate financial perjury, I tell him. That is attempted real estate fraud, extortion, and criminal harassment. I am not going to jail for you, the attorney gasps. His voice is completely frantic. He shoves his fraudulent legal briefs back into his briefcase. He does not even look at my parents. He turns on his heel, sprints down my driveway, jumps into his luxury sedan, and speeds away. He abandons them right there on my sidewalk. The silence that follows is utterly deafening. The golden empire has crumbled. Helen begins to wail. It is a shrill, pathetic sound that echoes down the quiet suburban street. The facade has entirely cracked. He owes $200,000 to dangerous people, Marin, she screams, tears streaming down her perfectly powdered face. They are going to hurt him. You have to sacrifice for this family. You have to sell the house. She expects me to break. She expects the invisible daughter to throw herself onto the grenade to save the king. You do not love me, I say, my tone is cold as absolute zero. You only love that I never cost you a dime. Richard steps forward, his fists clenched, his face purple with sheer rage. You ungrateful little brat, I will force you out of this house myself. I do not flinch. I slowly pull my phone back up, open the keypad, and dial 911. I put it on speakerphone. Emergency dispatcher, what is your emergency? The operator asks. Yes, I need a squad car at my residence immediately, I say, maintaining eye contact with my completely horrified father. I have 2 aggressive trespassers attempting extortion and threatening physical violence on my property. They freeze. The predators have just become the prey. You would not, my mother whispers, utterly horrified. I just did, I reply. 10 minutes later, the flashing blue and red lights of a county sheriff's cruiser illuminate my driveway. 2 massive officers step out. My father immediately tries to play the victim, waving his hands and putting on a fake, trembling voice, telling the officers it is just a simple family misunderstanding. But the local and federal statutes do not care about his pathetic lies. I show the officers my deed. I show them my ID. And I request a formal criminal trespass warning to be issued immediately. The officers separate us, take down my parents' information, and inform them that if they ever step foot on my property again, they will be arrested and thrown into the county jail without hesitation. I stand on my porch and watch the officers escort Richard and Helen back to their car. They look utterly diminished. They look small, broken, and completely pathetic. As their car disappears down the street, I feel a weight that I have carried for 32 years simply vanish into the wind. That night, my phone rings. I look at the caller ID. It is Declan. I answer it, putting the phone to my ear, waiting in absolute silence. You are so cold, Marin, he slurs into the receiver, his voice thick with alcohol and sheer terror. If I lose my life over these debts to these people, it is entirely your fault. Family helps family. You dug your own grave, Declan, I reply, my voice completely steady. I am not jumping into the dirt with you. I hang up the phone. I block his number. I block my parents' numbers. On Monday morning, I do not go to work. I drive downtown and I retain a ruthless, highly expensive civil litigator. I hand her my black ledger, my security camera footage of the porch ambush, and the criminal trespass warning. By Wednesday, a federal cease and desist warrant is delivered to my parents' home via certified mail, threatening severe, bankrupting litigation for attempted extortion if they ever attempt to contact me or lay claim to my assets again. The silence that follows is absolutely profound. 6 months later, I am sitting on my back porch. I am sipping a warm cup of coffee, watching the golden sunrise illuminate my perfectly manicured garden. The air is fresh. The house is quiet. I am completely at peace. While I am thriving in my beautiful $600,000 sanctuary, Richard and Helen are living a waking nightmare. I heard through the grapevine of extended relatives that the dangerous people Declan owed money to finally came knocking. To keep their precious golden child out of a wooden box, my parents were forced to completely liquidate their own retirement estate. They had to sell their massive, luxurious home at a massive loss. They drained their savings accounts. They are now renting a crumbling, cramped, two-bedroom apartment on the bad side of town, working part-time retail jobs in their 60s just to keep the lights on, while Declan continues to gamble away what little grocery money they have left. They tried to use a fraudulent eviction notice to make me homeless, and in the end, they lost their own home. Family is supposed to be blood, but sometimes, blood just means you are dealing with a parasite. I have built an empire of peace, security, and absolute freedom that none of their money, manipulation, or toxic entitlement could ever buy. Thank you for listening to my story. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with toxic family members to protect your peace? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, share it, and subscribe for more real-life dramas where justice always wins.